Hello, good morning. I'm so glad you're here. If you are thinking about homeschooling your kids, this video is your starting point. I'm going to give you the exact game plan step by step. And I have some notes that I'm going to put on a screen for myself just so I make sure I don't miss anything as we're going through this. I want to tell you something right up front, though. For me personally, I knew I was going to homeschool before I ever had children. This was not a panic decision for me. It was a calling. And I want you to know that because the game plan I'm going to walk you through today comes from someone who chose this on purpose and then spent 20 years figuring it out and how to do it well. Both of my boys are now grown. Both went on to college, and I did this without a teaching degree. Just a deep belief that I knew my children and that I knew I was enough to get started and do it. I knew that my convictions would help carry me through. So by the end of this video, you are going to know exactly what to do first and second and third and so on. So let's get started. Some of the truths about your first year homeschooling are this. Even when you're confident in your decision to homeschool, and I do hope that you are, the first year still comes with a lot of decisions to make. And that volume of decisions can feel overwhelming even for the most committed mom. So, what curriculum do I choose? Questions that are like that. What does a day look like? How do I know that we're on track? Am I doing enough? And I kind of want to normalize that. If you're having those kind of questions, that is normal. I want you to be assured in that. Confidence in the decision and certainty about every step are two different things. So you can be completely sure you are supposed to do this and still need a roadmap. And that is what today is. The key is knowing what to focus on first, what to leave alone until later, what can wait. That is what I kind of got wrong initially when I was homeschooling, and it's what I'm going to help you get right. So the first thing I want to address is something I call reconnection. So if your scenario is such that your child is coming out of a traditional school setting, even if they've been in that setting briefly, the very first thing you need to do before you open a single curriculum is simply reconnect with your child or children. This is really a critical step. I call it the reconnection season for a reason. And some people call it deschooling. But whatever you call it, the gist of it is the same. And I'm not telling you to unschool. I'm not saying that either. Okay. Those are kind of two different things. And when you're around homeschooling enough, you're going to hear these kind of terms. But it's really about reconnecting, having that connection with your child. But the idea is the same. Give your child time to decompress from the rhythms and the expectations of a classroom, a traditional classroom, before you ask them to learn in a whole new way. Even when homeschooling is clearly the right choice, and it was for us from day one, children still carry habits and assumptions from being in that traditional setting if they're coming out of that setting. They're used to waiting to be called on. They're used to learning in a certain order and at a certain pace. So give them space just to kind of let go a little bit. We want to let go of those thoughts and those expectations and behaviors and patterns that they've gotten used to. So during this season, you're going to be reading together. Go outside, go on nature walks, cook something, build something, follow their curiosity without turning it into a deliberate lesson. The learning is already happening. You're just letting them remember that learning is natural. So the general guideline typically is 1 month of reconnection time for every year that they spent in a traditional environment. So trust that process. That again, this is a natural thing. And then from there, while you're kind of doing that part when you're reconnecting, or if you're like me and you knew from the beginning that you were going to homeschool, one of the first steps that you really need to have an understanding of is that every state has different rules for homeschooling, and you need to know what your state's rules are before you start. So the 3 questions to get answered: does your state require you to notify your school district? Are there attendance or subject requirements? Do you need to keep records or submit portfolios? A quick search for homeschool laws in your state will get you there fast. The hslda.org, Homeschool Legal Defense Association, also has a full state-by-state breakdown. It's very organized. It's a very easy to navigate website. And just taking 30 minutes to research this, not 30 hours, you'll get your answers. So don't let it become a reason to delay starting, okay? The next process before we really just jump into curriculum is that you want to have an understanding of your children's learning styles before picking curriculums. And multiple reasons for doing that. You're not going to have this struggle. You're going to save money by doing this. And if you followed me long enough, you've heard me kind of touch on some of this already. But this is the step that I see skipped most often. And so don't skip it. And it is one that causes the most first year friction. Most moms they just want to jump straight to curriculum. They just can't help themselves. And I kind of get it as well. It's fun to look at all the different curriculums, but you want to be intentional about this. A lot of parents, when they jump in, they pick something popular or something they've heard about. They spend hundreds of dollars perhaps, and then their child fights them on it every day, every single day. It's a battle, and they feel like they failed. They didn't fail. They just picked a curriculum for the wrong learner. Okay. So there are 4 main learning styles. So let's touch on those a little bit. You have your visual learners, auditory learners, you have your kinesthetic learners, and reading, writing learners. And when you know how your child actually learns, you can match the curriculum to their wiring, how they're naturally wired to learn, instead of fighting it every morning. Believe me, you're going to not want to skip the step. It's that critical. And I learned this from raising 2 boys who were completely different from one another. One had dyslexia, and so he needed more breaks and needed a lot of patience. And he needed materials that worked with how his brain processed information, not against it. And not only that, but I had to learn that, because that wasn't the way I typically learned. And it was a learning curve for me as well, to make the breaking part, especially to get up. It was a lot more frequent than I would have thought. And so just understand that, and having that understanding makes such a big difference for your child's environment of learning. And so that worked for us. My other son was a natural sponge. He wanted more and he wanted faster always. What worked beautifully for one would have completely been wrong for the other. So once I understood that, I stopped trying to find that one perfect curriculum for both of them and started finding the right fit for each one individually. Now, I will say that even the style of learning that I wanted to incorporate in our homeschooling, I adapted. But again, it came from a point that I understood both of their learning styles, and I could adapt the curriculum for them. So keep that in mind. And this is when things start to click. I walked through all 4 styles, these learning styles that I just touched on a little bit, in chapter 2 of the Homeschool Roadmap, including how to identify which one fits your child. So do this before you spend $1 on curriculum. And then you want to have just a simple start, the 3 subject rule for year 1. Here is permission you might not know you needed. You do not have to teach every single subject your first year every single day. So start with the three main ones: math, reading, and language arts. And whatever lights your child up right now, science, history, art, nature study, it doesn't matter, but pick one thing they are genuinely excited about. Obviously, again, if you're one that's coming from a traditional setting and perhaps the child is older, maybe middle school age, you have to kind of play that into this factor. But a lot of times too, you're going to find that those kiddos can also be deficient in some of these primary subjects that they need to really have mastery on. And so, again, taking that time to reconnect, you're going to figure this out pretty quickly, and then it's going to make everything else go much more smoothly. So you're doing your three subjects done well every day, and that's your first year. Really getting to the mastery, getting your rhythm, getting your daily rhythm, getting your home rhythm and routines. Your first year is not about coverage. It's really about building that rhythm, building the trust, building the confidence, yours and your child's. And you cannot do that if you are drowning in 6, 7, 8 subjects and 2 workbooks for each one. So just keep it simple in the beginning, and you can always add more next year. And another part about the rhythm, think of it as a rhythm and not a schedule. This might be a single most important practical shift that I can give you. A schedule says we're going to do math at 9 a.m., reading is at 9:45 a.m., and science is at 10:30. Whereas a rhythm says we always do math first, then we read together, and then we explore. See how that sounds different? And it feels different to the child. So a schedule breaks the moment your child is sick, or maybe you had a vet appointment for one of the animals, or your morning just goes sideways. People, you wake up in a bad mood. You're not doing your best. We've all had those days. Kids have it too. And then you just feel like your whole day has failed. Whereas if you have the rhythm in place, it travels with you. It gives your kids the predictability that they need without the rigidity that breaks everyone. Our days had a lot going on. Barn chores before sunrise, rodeo weekends, activities for both boys because they were extremely involved in multiple activities. A rhythm was the only thing that worked for us. The boys knew barn first, then breakfast, then learning every day. In that order. It was not a clock. It was a sequence. And that sequence gave everyone, including myself, a sense of what was coming. Next, I want you to think about that rhythm, and then we're going to put it through like what works and what was actually hard, and we work through it. So I want to be honest with you about my experience because I think it will help you. Again, I always knew that I was going to homeschool. The decision was never the hard part for me, but what was hard was the sheer volume of choices and figuring out what worked for each boy individually, because they were so different from each other in their learning styles. And as I said, one of my sons had dyslexia, learning that, understanding what it meant for how he learned, finding the right materials, knowing when to push and when to give him a break. That was critical. That was a huge learning curve for me personally. And that took time and patience. And I'm not talking about years, but I had to learn along with him. And that's one of the things you've heard me say, if you follow me, be okay with learning alongside your child. This is critical. And it's one of the beauties of homeschooling. There were days when he just did not want to work. And I had to figure out whether that was the dyslexia talking or, just a boy that would rather be outside playing, quite honestly. Learning to read, felt icky sometimes. Some days it wasn't that fun for him, especially when when things would jump around on the page. It would almost create a queasiness for him, to be honest with you. And I could look him within a second and see his color change. And then I knew I had my answer. Again, I had to learn that. So that's kind of, one of those things, but it's also the beauty of homeschooling. And my other son was the opposite. He absorbed everything and wanted more. The challenge there was keeping up with him, finding material that stretched with him without getting ahead of what he was ready for. And what I had to learn with both of them was to stop comparing my homeschool to anyone else's. I had to embrace learning alongside, like I just said, with both of my boys, rather than always feeling like I needed to be 10 steps ahead. That's just not realistic. And that shift from performing the role of teacher to genuinely learning alongside them, that changed everything. And it is the thing I most want you to carry into your first year. Homeschooling is not just a school choice. It is a lifestyle. And when you step into it with intention, with a real game plan, it becomes one of the most meaningful things you will ever do for your family. It's one of the most consequential decisions that we made for our family. And I wrote every bit of this down in the Homeschool Roadmap. It's on Amazon right now, and the link will be in the description. It is the book I built from 20 years of doing this, so you do not have to have it all figured out alone. I wish I'd had a book like this when I started, and I've heard that from other homeschool moms that have also read my book. They wish they'd had this from a lot of us veteran homeschoolers. And that was my intention behind writing the Homeschool Roadmap. And if you've already grabbed a copy and it has helped you even a little, an Amazon review right now would mean so much. It helps another mom just like you find it when she needs it. You have got this. I really believe that. And I will see you in the next video. Thanks for being here today. Take care. Happy homeschooling.